Welcome into the Pats Nation. I'm Corso. Catone is here. Joe's with us in the booth, and you are watching us on YouTube, listening on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, 790 The Score in Rhode Island. And, hey, make sure you give us a call and heated hotline, 855-313-PATS, P-A-T-S, 24/7. It's a message line. Have a take. Joe's going to pick one. Let's hope it's yours. So, hey, we got a special show today. Special one, Mark. Today.
Yeah, I like these special shows, Chris.
Yeah, I do too. A Patriot for Life is what Joe's calling this one today, and it's going to be our tribute to Tom Brady. Of course, he was enshrined earlier in the summer and earlier in the year into the Patriots Hall of Fame, and we want to talk all about that. But we also want to go back and talk about the 2 decades. Break those things down and discuss a little, gentlemen.
Which is really, when you think about it, Chris, 2 decades, like 2
and we
decades.
say it like it's
yeah, no big deal. We're gonna talk about
whenever,
2 decades.
220 years, the hell with it, So, people get married and divorced like 6 times in that kind of period of time.
Seriously,
right?
So, well, let's get right into it then. Okay, so we're gonna talk Tom Brady as a Patriot, starting when he was drafted. Of course, we know 6th round, 199th, out of Michigan. He looked like he cleaned pools. This is in his combine. Is what he looked like. He looked like the guy that was the ball boy or something like that, or carrying the water. But anyway,
something like that, right?
They drafted him out of Michigan in the 6th round, 199. So, Mark, talking about the first decade, okay? Because there's a time where Brady becomes the GOAT, and it's not at this time. He doesn't walk in and all of a sudden just putting up numbers, right?
No, not at the beginning. Absolutely not. No.
Not GOAT numbers, but he did when he came in. He kind of swayed the ship, He still had a big presence by what he was doing.
It's funny that he says that, because was it that he had a big presence, or was it the fact that people were kind of fed up with Bledsoe? I mean, we watched that whole stupid dynasty thing, as all of you did out there, and
stupid thing.
The way it made it sound was that everybody was up in arms that Bledsoe, when he got, when he was healed up, was benched for Brady, and everybody was up in arms about it. I think people were sick and tired of Bledsoe at that point.
I certainly was.
Well, I don't know, Chris. Maybe they may have been, but I will say this. And Joe says, but based on Joe's comment, I will say this, Chris. I think that competitiveness and that fire was always there with Brady. I mean, it's just that was just something innate that he had in him that you weren't going to keep him off of the field. I think the attention to detail and everything he learned about the game and the film study and the understanding of what's in front of him, I absolutely didn't have that when he walked on the field when Bledsoe got hurt. That was what I think he learned in that first decade, maybe 5 years from Bill. Right? Yeah. I mean, everyone can say whatever they want. It wasn't him, was it him? They can have that argument, but I think the combination of the two, they grew together. I think he learned that at the beginning of that decade, Chris, 01, 02, 03, 04. I wouldn't say the Brady we saw after. That wasn't him then, do you think?
No, that wasn't the GOAT. That wasn't, this was a guy that came in, managed the game, don't do it. It's funny because when we get to the enshrinement, we'll talk about what Bill had to say, about Brady. And one of the things is that what impressed him the most about Brady, and this was right off the bat, was his ability to stay out of bad plays, was his ability to not put his team in a bad spot. Yeah. A lot of people call that, game managing. Okay, but, that's a simplified term.
Yeah, but Chris, when you're right, that's simplified terms, because how many teams try to have a quarterback game manage the game?
Yeah,
they can't do it, right? You can't do it.
That's the thing he came out of the gate being able to do, is to be able to say, I'm not going to go down and to take Super Bowl 36 out for 1 second, but maybe I can't come down and, throw for 300 yards, 300, excuse me, 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, all these things that he ended up being able to do in his career. But he's certainly not going to put you behind the sticks. He's not going to throw interceptions. He's not going to put you in bad spots. He's not going to get your team, check you out of the wrong play. He's not going to do those kinds of things. And I think to Belichick's point, that's what Brady was coming in. So he worked I think his work ethic was always his work ethic, Now he learned how to be a pro in that first decade from Bill. He learned the Patriot way.
Let me ask you this. When Bledsoe was ready to come back, did anybody ask them? Did anybody say, we need Bledsoe back in there? That's the thing. I don't. And now we look at like going off of, let's say, Zappy, with Jones going in there. I think everybody was kind of hoping he was going to be Brady in that same regard, where he came in and then people were like forgotten about Bledsoe. They didn't say we need him back in here. Nobody said that.
Nationally, I think it was, what are they doing? Because everybody was looking at the money.
Right.
You got $100 million quarterback. You're benching him. What the hell are you doing? Locally, I think everybody was sick of seeing patting the ball, throwing it out, interceptions, bad throws. He was declining a little, Bledsoe. So okay. So we know that Brady was always that guy that didn't put him in bad spots. But he credits a lot of the rest of the team, Mark. So when you look at him in the first half, McGinnis and those guys, how did he absorbed it all, didn't he?
He did. He absorbed the leadership. He absorbed the attention to preparation, the film study. He absorbed all of that from Bill, from the veterans that were on the team, from other coaches, from Scarnecchia, from the OCs. He absorbed it all and was like a sponge, and took that and to make him a better player. But yeah, those veterans, and later in his career, when we talk about the second decade, he became one of those guys. And I think later in his career, that kind of led to some frustration too, because this next generation of guys weren't necessarily like that, right? And I think even with Tampa, he won a Super Bowl there, but he quickly became frustrated because that wasn't what was surrounding him. You know what I mean? And he makes the statement at his his enshrinement that, and we're going to talk about it, that as you walked out of that locker room, that first decade, Seymour's locker was right at the entrance and exit of the door, and you weren't getting by him, McGinnis. I said Seymour, McGinnis, without a comment from McGinnis about, hey, you played like crap today, like whatever. And there was a conversation. You know what I mean? And there was that respect where, okay, I'm going to have to own up for what I did. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Exactly. The accountability, holding people accountable. And again, the stuff from Bill, and later on then from Rodney Harrison and some of these guys, that the accountability, the team first. I mean, that was the big thing that I think he learned coming in, is team first, not individual, team first. And you could see it in his contracts where, he was taking team-friendly deals throughout his entire career. And I think that was based on something he learned from moment one, from those guys that came from the Parcells time, that would draft Brewski, those guys that were drafted, the Vrabels and Pfeiffers and all these guys. We keep naming a lot of off defensive guys, though. No.
Well, because
not even Troy Brown and guys like that.
But Chris, they said, the defense basically said, when he took over for Bledsoe, they made it incredibly hard for him to sit in practice. So he was, you know what I mean? They threw everything at him in practice and made it very difficult for him in practice. It wasn't just like, hey, you know what? He's got the yellow jersey on. We'll take it easy. They made it difficult for him. And in those days, Chris, they had different practice rules. So there was hitting. It was a different era and a different time. And those guys helped prepare him because of what went on in practice too.
So that when he played other teams, it was like easier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's getting more crap during practice than he would be in the game.
Like Brady likes to say, people talk about preparedness and toughness and how difficult was it and to play for Bill and blah, blah. He said, listen, he always makes reference to the fact that we had the answers to the test. Like he always makes reference to that. Well, we had the answers to the test. For any situation, they had the answers to the test. And he took that with him moving forward. And listen, the first
it wasn't by cheating.
No, well, that's a whole nother issue. That's a whole nother show, for crying out loud. But listen, Chris, we talk about the first decade. Okay, you and I are talking about the first really 5 years, because then in 07, something happens. It changes. Yeah. I don't necessarily think what we're describing right now, because 07 is part of that first decade. What do you see? What happens in 07?
Well, when in 07, you get him the players now. See, okay, so in 01, when they go to the Super Bowl, right? You say, well, he got Super Bowl MVP. Now, if you think about it, if he didn't drive that team, in other words, if they figured out a different way, if they were up or they kicked the field goal at the end, but they drove the ball down in a different way, they had better field. But it wasn't Brady who led them from the 20 down. I think Ty Law gets the MVP. You know what I'm saying in that game? So, but now you fast forward to 07. Yeah, you got the 03 and 04 and so on. And we're going to, hey, by the way, we're going to be doing our top 5 best Patriots teams of all time as well.
Wow.
I'll be hearing that on the Pats Nation.
That should be interesting.
Sundays, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern. Cheap plug. But
in 07, Chris, it was different, right?
Yeah, it was different. I mean, you got him players. So now you really saw what he could be when Randy Moss came in and Welker came in and Stallworth came in, and boom, it just exploded. You just exploded. Now I would say in 06, you started to see that anyway. I mean, I know they lost against Indy in the AFC Championship game that year, right? But
the wide receivers were from the Little Sisters of the Poor in that season.
Exactly. But you saw from 01, 03, 04 the progression and his ability. Here's the thing. What you saw was his ability to elevate the guys around him. And you started to see that in 03 and 04, right? And then in 07, he didn't really have to do that as much because he had all those guys and those weapons, and he just exploded, Mark.
Yeah, leading up to 07, Chris, it was almost like, okay, so here's the training wheels. We're going to teach you how to drive the bike.
Right.
And then we're going to progress you to the Ford Pinto. Chevy, was it Ford or Chevy Pinto? What was it? I forget. Joe, I forget. I'm Joe my age.
Or a Rabbit. How about a Rabbit?
A rabbit, right? And then in 07, okay, we've taught you what you need to know. Now it's time to give you the keys to the Ferrari and go.
Yeah,
and that's what 07. And that's what 07
did
was.
He ever?
Right?
Did he ever go, man? And that's where he became the GOAT. To me, that's where he became the GOAT.
You think
it wasn't so much about the rings? I think it was about what he. So, Mark, give me, and then we're gonna get the break and come back and talk about the second half. Because he gets hurt after 07, and then you get those couple of years there. So, tell me your notable moment from the first decade.
My notable moment, Chris, from the first decade is going to be, I don't know if there's a moment, but I will. I guess there is a moment. I'm going to say, believe it or not, Chris, I'm going to go, and I know he was learning, but I'm going to go back to 01 and that Super Bowl where there's John Madden's famous quote, they got to kneel on the ball. You can't take a shot with this kid in this situation. Kneel on the ball and go to overtime. And they give the ball to Brady. And despite the fact he was a game manager, Belichick knew, no, we're gonna go. He took them down the field. I don't, that moment, Chris. I know. He becomes the GOAT in 07, but he becomes Tom Brady.
Yeah.
In that, and as crazy as it sounds, on that possession, he becomes Brady, and Bledsoe's Patriot career is finished forever. It's like, okay, here, get behind me, boys. I'm ready. And he even got in the huddle, and you watch the film of that drive, and it's the beginning of the drive. It's just like his command in the huddle, Chris. At that point, like, we're gonna do this, guys. Let's go. Come on, let's roll, right? And I don't know, that believe it or not, to me stands out because nobody ever talks about that, Chris.
Yeah, and I think Belichick was kind of surprised too. I think Belichick's theory in that was, I don't want to give the ball back to I don't want.
If I give it back to them, we lose.
You know what I mean? So we're gonna do whatever we have to do.
To me, the defense was gassed.
To me, real quick, is the snowball scramble and the run against Urlacher. Okay. To me, that just shows, those were notable moments to me because it kind of tells you what his makeup was. He seemed happy of running the ball like that, just spiking that ball. I think Belichick said, I thought he was going to separate his shoulder when he spiked the ball in the snowball game when he ran it in. That's like, to me, shows that kind of who he is, Tom Brady. Yeah. So that's the first decade, and we want to get to the second decade, but this portion of the Pats Nation was presented by Corso Law Group, CorsoLawGroup.com. Hey, when we come back, we're going to talk second decade of Tom Brady. Stick around.
No one ever thinks they will be in need of a criminal or traffic lawyer, but things happen. Corso Law Group is Arizona's leading criminal and traffic law firm. Their 20-plus years experience and attention to detail has helped thousands of people who found themselves in a situation in Arizona. Whether it's a traffic ticket or more serious issue, talk with these expert attorneys. CorsoLawGroup.com.
Back in with more Corso and Catone, the real deal New England feel. All right, Mark, so we talked the first half. Now we get from 2010 to 2020. So now his appearance changes, his hairstyles change. He's growing up now. He's not that, young-looking kid that with still baby fat on, right? He's over there.
Yeah. He met Alex Guerrero.
He met Alex Guerrero. He starts taking care of his body differently. And to me, this is the decade where he turns into the coach. He turns into the player coach, basically. This is the decade he turns into, I'll use your term, the bridge.
Yeah. And what does that mean, the bridge?
Well, the bridge, the bridge between the coach and the player. Where you're starting to see a different kind of player in the NFL now. Getting into 2010
and Belichick is starting to lose touch a little bit with that type of player, correct?
Yeah, and you're starting to see guys that think a little bit about more feelings, about themselves more, about quality of life more than the team. Then you're starting to see that happen in pro sports. And Brady's still cut from the cloth of like you say, you got to walk past McGinnis to get out of the locker room. And what Belichick created as the Patriot way, team first. And guys, that's happening to guys. But Brady is so revered and respected that he has to make a decision at this point now to say to himself, am I gonna morph into what the new kind of player is? Or am I gonna stay true to what I've learned and grown with? But I'm gonna pull these guys in and make sure it's easier for Bill. I mean, what did you see?
Yes, and we've talked about this, Chris. That's absolutely what I saw. Was he did become the bridge. He was, follow my lead. He's chewing me out in a film room because I called the wrong audible at the line of scrimmage, and he's telling me what the F is wrong with you, Brady. And you got second and third year guys. He's calling out a Hall of Famer. And well, shoot, what the hell? We got nothing to say. So like he took it for all those years and was the leader. And so everybody fell into place and it was the Patriot way. But Brady became now the one constant and the one glue because these younger guys, Chris. Yeah, I guess you ended up with guys like Devin McCourty and Bruschi was still around towards the a little bit there, but kind of faded. And I guess you brought in guys like Hightower and Mayo, and they kind of filled in the Bruschi roles and the McGinnis role. Will Falk, those guys kind of took the lead from Brady too.
Yeah.
So, but he kind of was the conduit of that and kind of put that together and in place. And because he was the leader, they followed that from him. And, and that's where I think the divide of, well, was it Tom or was it Bill? Well, a lot of it as we get towards into that second decade, Chris, I think is Tom's, not only his skill and what he could do on the field, but it was the locker room stuff and the leadership stuff. And it's the lead by example, and we're not going to leave any stone unturned. We're going to meet on a Saturday night at 8:30 in the quarterback room, and then we're meeting with the OC until midnight. Like those things no other team was doing, but Tom was doing it, so everybody else had to fall into place and do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he led by example, and he continues that message because, and you see that front and center when he leaves. When he leaves the Patriots, it all crumbled within because nobody's willing to buy into that philosophy that was 20 years old, or more. So, and it's also the decade where the adversity starts to come in. See, because the first decade, they were the darlings of the league. Everybody.
07 was Deflategate, Chris.
Yeah, it was. But even that.
I'm sorry, not Deflategate. Spygate. I'm sorry.
I know,
Spygate.
but the coach took that more on the chin than the team. The team was still looked at.
But the team rallied behind him, Chris.
Yes,
and they were running scores up and just destroying teams in 07. And listen,
because guys like Morse had tons of respect for him.
Listen, I know that foolish dynasty is a disgrace. However, in that, they do exemplify that 017, Chris, absolutely rallied behind Belichick, and it was us against the world in 07. You know what I mean?
But that was more about the coach rather than the team itself. Where you start to get into this decade, the second decade, now you start to see the players, Brady, start to get poked at now. And the team itself starts to get poked at by everybody. They're on top too long. They were on top too long. The NFL couldn't have it. It's bad for business to have one team that's constantly there every single year. And now every little thing they do is magnified, blown up. Things like Deflategate. So now you have this come into the mix where, the ball being deflated, PSI. I mean, when you talk about it now, it's probably the biggest overreaction in NFL history was this stupid Deflategate thing where, investigations, Wickersham reports things are coming out. And so you're starting to see them needing to be people trying to knock them off the perch. And so you needed this guy to come in and say, we're rising above all that. And we're going to beat the crap out of teams anyway. We're going to still win regardless. And that's where like you say, he becomes the leader. He becomes the face of the franchise. It's not really just Bill now. It's Brady and Bill. Not Bill and Brady. It's Brady and Bill. And
Chris, Bill, but Brady starts to promote himself a little bit in this decade. He starts TB12 and so he wants Alex Guerrero in the locker room with him. So he starts to, yes, it's team, but you start to see a little bit of a change in how Tom kind of carries himself. And he starts demanding certain things, though, right?
That's the stuff.
Right?
And that's the stuff that begins the divide. That's the stuff that starts to begin the divide between he and Bill. When Guerrero wants to come in, when he wants to train outside the organization and pull other players in, Gronkowski and so on, to that method versus what the team is doing. So you start to see that going on as well. So there's a lot of stuff happening off the field in the second decade. And yet he still maintains the best in the league. You know what I mean? And so that's interesting, isn't it, Mark? And how he's bringing these guys along and how he's getting these guys to buy in, but at the same time, he's becoming his own person. Because when you had a lot of personalities now coming into this team, in the second half. Will Falk was a personality. Gronkowski, my God. Hernandez. You had that whole drama of what was going on and the way he was behaving in the facility and literally scaring the crap out of other teammates, So there's a lot of nonsense going on, but yet they just keep purring and buzzing along, right?
Yeah, they did. They kept moving. But, and so
Well, you get to 2014 and that Super Bowl against Seattle, Mark, was, and we're kind of talking about the team versus Brady right now, but if they don't win that Super Bowl, I wonder if Pete Carroll calls another call and he hands it to Marshawn Lynch. I don't know
what happens. Yeah, I don't know what happens there. It's and hey, listen, it's if listen, what are you gonna do? 07 if the guy don't make the helmet catch. I mean, so
talk about the relationship with he and Bill. Talk about that a little bit, how that started to go, and you touched on it a little bit with the Guerrero stuff.
So Tom starts to feel himself a little bit, and I think his ego, at some point, Chris, in this next decade, I think he says, look, I'm the glue holding these guys together right now. They're following me. I don't think he felt necessarily the love and respect that Belichick probably should have given him. At some point, it's now like, okay, you got to get treated a little bit differently now because you have now become the mantle in that locker room. And I don't think Bill ever changed how he dealt with him. And I think Brady's ego started to step in a little bit, Chris. And you really see it when Deflategate happens and Brady gets suspended for 4 games. And Garoppolo's there, and Garoppolo plays well. Garoppolo gets hurt, but he plays well. And Garoppolo got drafted early, was a second round. Yeah. And you kind of sort of handwriting on the wall. Bill's now getting his transition plan ready for Brady when he's done. And Brady's like, well, I'm going to play till I'm 45. But
because now he's what, 14 years in now.
14 years in.
And the organization is starting to say, well, how much longer
can he do this?
Right.
And if you remember correctly, Chris, was it what year was it? It was the Seattle year that
14.
They went 14. They went 2-2. They got blown out by Kansas City. And
that was the on to Cincinnati.
Yes, I was just going to say. And Belichick says it's on to Cincinnati. But that year, everybody started to say that Brady's washed up. He's not the same Brady. He's declining. And I think Bill fed into that a little bit and might have saw some of that on tape. I don't know. He is Bill. I don't know. But that started to creep into people's mindset, Chris, in that season. Even though they won the Super Bowl, it starts to creep into people's mindset in 14. But then he wins the Super Bowl. He wins another one. So Kraft
should have won 17. He threw 5 touchdowns in that Philly Super Bowl.
Well, we're not going to get into Malcolm Butler there. He's not on the field. But Belichick makes the decision.
Like they should have won 3 in a row, but go ahead.
Well, Kraft makes the decision.
Twice.
It's Brady, not Garoppolo.
Yeah.
They ship him out.
2017 now, yeah.
And then Kraft doesn't give him the contract that he wants to play until he's 45. And that, Chris, is where the relationship gets severed.
Yeah.
There. Not 2-3 years later. It's there. Garoppolo goes, you should have put the contract in front of him. Okay, so now you're here, you're 45 years old. Sign it. Team-friendly deal. He would have signed it because now I'm here till I'm 45. I know I'm the starting quarterback. You're showing me respect. Doesn't happen. And that's where the relationship severs, Chris, in this last decade.
And we've talked about this on the show a lot. And that's where the divide came between he and Bill, because I think he blames Bill for that. I think he blames Bill for that because I think he feels like Bill's making all these decisions. I've maintained that it's Kraft. That Kraft could have stopped that from happening. That's a story for another day. This is about Brady. But that, you're right. That creates that divide. But, if you think about it, too, the greatness of Tom Brady in this decade, and I know we got to get to the enshrinement, but the greatness of Brady in that decade was now even more about his preparation, his study, okay, that he had the answers to the test. Because now he's seen a lot. He's seen pretty much everything you can possibly see. Because if you think about it, he had more talent in the second decade than he did in the first. I'm not talking about 07. Take 07 out.
Yep, he did.
But you had Gronk, you had Edelman, you had better players.
Offensive players,
in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah.
So What do you got for a notable moment of him in the second half?
Second half, Chris, I'm going to have to choose 16 because the Super Bowl against Atlanta, not because he came back from 28-3, because he goes through the Deflategate. He's benched for 4 games. It was just this whole season-long drama, and he shows up in that Super Bowl. You fall behind, and you see him walking up and down the sideline. We're not done. We're not done. We're not done. Let's go. We're not done. Like he just that's when he was like, shut the door, slam the door. Joe's not going to like this. Forget Joe Montana.
Montana's gone.
I'm the greatest that's ever lived. Forget Montana. It's over. Shut the door, close it, and lock it. And that is the moment there that night.
There, you know what? I have the same one. The laser focus moment.
Yep.
The laser focus, boys. Yelling up and down this thing. Laser focus. Let's go. Let's do it.
I know Joe's not going to like that. He's a Montana guy.
No, see, at this point, I actually can appreciate now Brady taking the helm over Montana.
Well, I would hope so.
Well, I mean, you know, as far as like, you know, when someone has a favorite, it's like, you know, you could talk me out of it, but like at this stage of the game, it's like, no, it's real. But it took a while for it to get real. You know what I mean?
So yeah, perfect. So yeah, so that's our take of the first two decades of what Tom Brady was, and now, you know, he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. So we need to talk about that. But this portion of the Pats Nation was presented by the Pats Nation Joe, Sundays 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to be talking. Mark and I are going to be there with Joe. We're going to be talking all Patriots all the time. Going to be the pregame. We're going to be the first pregame show during the season on the same network that's airing the Patriots games live, and that's 790 to score and every outlet. So you're never going to want to miss that. Stick around for the Pats Nation. But when we come back, we're going to talk enshrinement, Hall of Fame, a lot of good things. No flipping.
Sundays are for football, and here in New England, that means it's the Pats Nation with Corso and Catone.
You have the worst wide receiver room in the National Football League.
This is why the Patriots need us in the draft room. Let's see what the Pats Nation thinks about that, Mark.
Starting June 30th, Sundays, 8 to 9 a.m. on 790 The Score.
And this is our nice show. And nice, talking nice. Tune in for that. Nice. You're gonna hear some fireworks and things like that. So Mark, we talked about Brady, talked about his performance and what he was. Now we have the enshrinement ceremony. Mark and I got to be there for that. And it was something special. It was it was a once in a lifetime event. And I want us to get into that. But before we get into that, we talked to a couple of people outside the stadium before it began, right?
We did. And, it was fun. That was fun night.
Joe, and I think Joe has some of that. And we want to play that because we want to hear from you what you thought, and then we'll get into our thoughts. Corso and Catone out at the Patriots Brady enshrinement. Listen, we're here with
Mike Zimmerman.
Where are you from?
I'm from Lee, New Hampshire.
Okay, great. So, Mike, Corso and Catone out at the Tom Brady enshrinement ceremony. I have a huge fan.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
So this is from
Rhode Island. Let's take a look at that belt. Mark and I are with them. Tell me about the belt, first of all.
It came from WWE. They did a line of these last year. I jokingly sent my wife the email about them, just like, hey, wouldn't it be neat? The next thing I know, I got the confirmation email saying I'm getting the thing. I'm like, oh, she actually did it.
So there's no question you're a lifelong Patriots fan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What are you expecting tonight?
I'm hoping for just a lot of fun, a lot of stories, stuff we haven't heard before. I don't really come with many expectations just because I just want to be able to take it all in.
Yeah. They said there's some surprises tonight, right, Mark?
A lot of surprises. We'll see what it is.
Yeah. So, and then afterwards, you take it in. You think this is it for Brady coming back or what?
No, I'm sure he'll be back, every once in a while whenever Fox lets him out of announcing that week, but might be a little while before we see him again.
Right. Well, listen, we appreciate fans like you. And
Andrew, have a fun time tonight.
Yeah, have a good
Thank
time.
you.
Corso and Catone, the real deal, New England Field Saturdays, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, 790 The Score. Thanks, Andrew.
No problem.
I had to get the plug in there, Mark, talking to Andrew.
Of course we did.
And so, hey, for those of you on iHeart and 790 that can't see the video of what Joe just put up, he had a belt. He had like a championship boxing belt or wrestling belt.
It was WWE wrestling belt.
WWE, right?
Yeah,
ahead,
but it had a Patriot logo in the middle of it, right? And it was cool, but it was like a WWE championship belt, Yeah. It was heavy. It looked,
it
was good quality.
Fun. You had to talk to him with that thing. He was parading that thing around, like the badge.
Yeah, the thing draped over his shoulder,
Yeah, and we talked to a couple other people. Maybe we'll get to another one later on in the show. But the atmosphere, Mark, going before it began. I mean, there were people there from like 2:00, and it was a 7:00 event, and people were just feeling good. It wasn't tense. It wasn't like a game day deal situation. People were just enjoying themselves, enjoying what was about to come, not knowing what was going to happen. The questions, is Bill going to be here? Is he not going to be here? What do you think they're going to do? They're going to retire his number. All these cool things that were happening before that. And then we get to the event. I mean, Mark, what were your impressions of the whole atmosphere of it all?
The atmosphere, Chris, was absolutely electric. And you're right. There wasn't that tenseness of, oh God, it's a playoff game. Can we beat them? And it was just a celebration. And that's really what it was a celebration. Everybody was jacked up. Everybody was ready. And Kraft, and you and I have given, Mr. Kraft a lot of BS over the last year, the way things have been handled, but it was a first-class event.
And we will continue to.
We'll continue to, but it was a first-class event. The whole thing, from the beginning to the end, to what was done during, to the people who showed up, it was just first class. It was done right. So I do have to give them credit, Chris, for the whole event in its totality was really done right. It was a class event. And there's and I know people are going to critique it and say, oh, why didn't they do this? So they did this and they were pampering to this. But listen, it was a first class event. It was all about Brady, and I thought they did it the right way, Chris.
Absolutely, I did. Everything you said. I mean, and the fact that the 60,000 people show for this thing, it was like a game. There were that many people. The place was full, lively, ready to go. Just enjoyed every second. You're right. The way the event flowed, what they had out there. Look, listen, nobody. This is how you talk about the GOAT. We're the real deal, New England Field. This is the guy that's the real deal, New England Field, Tom Brady. I mean, just some of the, before we get into when you have a guy has like 10 records, 10 NFL records. Most wins, most attempts, most completions, most yards, pretty much every category in the playoffs. 12,000 yards. He threw 89,000 yards. Just ridiculous, stupid numbers.
Stupid numbers.
Never going to touch those things. And no other player, to me, in history is going to put 60,000 people in a seat for a team Hall of Fame enshrinement ever. So it was an amazing event. And Mark, some of the people who stood out to you about who was there, because there's a lot of celebrities there.
There were a lot of celebrities there, and I know we're going to get into Belichick, so I'm not going to choose the obvious. Belichick showed up because I thought he would give a video message just because of his what's going on with Kraft. But he was there. That impressed me. But Chris, if you go to the games, season ticket holder, any game you would go to, especially in this last decade. We talked about the decades at the beginning. When Brady would come out for warm-ups at the beginning before the game started, they would play the Jay-Z music, let me reintroduce myself. And he would come out and go banana. The place would go nuts. Everybody would be waiting for him to come out of the tunnel. And that's what he would do is let's effing go, right? Well, the music starts playing in the background, and there's all smoke around the stage. And you figure, okay, here comes Brady, right? and Brady show comes through the smoke, but out of the smoke comes Jay-Z live. Like the place just went nuts because nobody expected Jay-Z to show up live at that event. Nobody. And Chris, you and I talked about the helicopter. Oh, we thought somebody left in a helicopter. That helicopter was for Jay-Z.
Oh yeah.
I found out after Jay-Z helicoptered out of there.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know who it was.
Too, man.
Yeah, I didn't know. You didn't even know who Jay-Z was. Joe, he's waiting for some band from the 70s to come out, Joe.
Unless it's like...
He says, who's that? I said, what?
Unless it's like Journey or Kiss or somebody like that. I don't know who the hell it was.
Kiss.
You're playing a song. I don't know, But
when you think about the production value of that's huge. Because you're right, Mark. Jay-Z is one of those guys. He doesn't just show up at any events for things unless he's getting like really either paid or he really, I don't know, enjoys Tom Brady or whatever. But the fact
I heard he got a couple of $2 million to show up. So Kraft dished it out for that event.
Had to.
My teenage boys told me that Jay-Z's washed up. He's yesterday's news. When I told them, I say, guys, Jay-Z was there. They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. He's like, that's because you're old. You think that's cool, Dad? I'm like, well, okay. Yeah. That's fine. But no, it was cool. Yeah, Kenny Chesney there, who I also didn't know who was.
You don't know who he was either.
And but he sang.
Well, you knew Bon Jovi.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a fixture there. But look, a lot of celebrities. Bono from YouTube had a video thank you to them because they play their song as well. So it all related, to what the Patriots do. It wasn't just people showing up out of nowhere that didn't really have a connection. It was things like that. There were about 100 players there, and then there was some that appeared on video. Patrick Mahomes sent in a video for him. Eli Manning, who, by the way, got the biggest boo of the night. He got booed as soon as he came up on the screen.
Really?
And
oh yeah, he did. Yeah,
he should. And a couple of Strahan, another guy that sent a message like that. And but the people that were there, I thought great moments from this. And I want to know, what stood out to you. The Peyton Manning showed up, because you told me that he said he'll never do anything on video about Tom Brady. Anything he talks about, it'll be live. It'll always be in person. And so he was there. He came in, and that was fun. Seeing probably the two greatest quarterbacks, or top one and maybe three if you put Montana in there, of all time, sitting on that stage talking about it. And it was funny, and it was as you would expect. I mean, Peyton Manning came up with something that stuck out to you that he doesn't normally. You hear different things, but he talked about Dungy, right?
Yeah, he talked about Dungy. So Manning says, you're playing against Tom, and there may be 3-4 minutes to go in a game, 5 minutes to go in a game, and you're going to go down the field and try to take the lead. He said, and before I go out there, Dungy would say, hey, don't score before 30 seconds, 40 seconds. And I'd be like, what? He's like, you can't score before 30 or 40 seconds. You can't give him the ball back with any time. And Manning's like, I'm playing against this great defense. I'm just trying to score. And Dungy's telling me, no, you're going to manage the clock too, because you can't give him the ball back. That's how crazy it was, Chris. Think about that.
Yeah, it was. And so, again, a lot of great moments, but the key ones to me, what they had is they had some seats on the stage with Brady, and Mike Tirico, who was a national guy. He was the MC. It was cool to get that. And then you had about 4 other seats. So they would bring like position groups up. They would bring like wide receivers up that play with them. And then Moss was in that group. And then you'd have quarterbacks that played, and Josh McDaniel, and you'd have defensive guys, and they would come up in groups and talk about them and so on. And then they had a secondary stage where other players get up and would announce people. Well, 2 moments to me stood out, Mark, was when Randy Moss was put on the screen to speak. Mm-hmm. The place just erupted in 100%. Applause for minutes, to the point where
he didn't expect it at all. It brought him to tears. He cried. He could not. I don't think he ever thought that he was going to get that type of reaction from our fans.
That was a great moment. It was the great moment, and he deserves it. I mean, you're talking about arguably the best receiver in NFL history, Ian Rice. I mean, so And then to me, the best moment of the night, okay, was Deion Branch and who's the other one? Oh, Troy Brown. We're up on the secondary stage talking about 4 things. The 4 things that make the dynasty what it is, what the Patriots are. You know, the first thing was the fans, they said. The second thing was the ownership. The third thing was Tom Brady. And the fourth thing, they brought him to the stage, the greatest coach of all time, and out comes Belichick. And the joint went nuts. I mean, nuts. I've never heard a lengthier ovation in that place in 30 years I've been going there than what I heard that night, Mark.
He got more of an ovation than Brady did.
5 minutes. They timed it. For 5 minutes, the fans gave him what he deserves, in my opinion. It could bring anybody to tears. It was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic.
And every time he tried to talk, Chris, that he couldn't because the fans just kept going.
Yeah, got louder and louder. And he had a lot of great things to say. Obviously, he did it in the Belichick way. It was a little off time. It was, because some of it was redundant. I mean, how much can you say? Sure. Guys were saying the same things about him, the same things. Belichick always brings another standpoint to it. Of course, he talked about his coaches and, all the players around them. But he talked about what I said in the first half of the show about he never put the team in a bad spot. He's never seen anything like that out of any player. And he's, obviously the greatest ever. So that was a fantastic moment.
Chris, it was a great moment. And you know what I found interesting? So he goes through and he's mentioning Brady and all these great things. And then he goes through and mentions, all of the great players that played for him. And how we were a team. And he talks about guys like, Brewski and Seymour and McGinnis and Rodney Harrison. And he always plugs Harrison for the Hall of Fame, no matter where he goes. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chris, he talks about the coaches and Scarnecchia and Josh McDaniels and he even mentions Billy O'Brien, all these guys. Never mentions Kraft. Never mentions the owner. Thanks to our own, our ownership for putting this together. Remember, never mentions Kraft. Mentions Aqib Talib, the corner, who only played a couple of years.
Yeah.
Doesn't mention Mayo,
who
he always said was one of the smartest guys he's ever coached. Nothing.
That's notable to me.
Right?
That was notable.
And I know this is about Brady, but we're just talking about what was so obvious.
We can't help ourselves. We can't help ourselves. We have to point out some of the negative things too.
Chris, wasn't that blatantly obvious? Those two guys.
Oh, to me it was. Yeah, to me it was ridiculously obvious. And we're gonna go to break. And the last thing I'll say about notable moments when they talked about his family, when they had his family in the video sitting around the kitchen table talking about him growing up and youth and some of his friends and some of the things he dealt with, and the sisters came to bat for him and stuck up for him when the other kids would bully him in the neighborhood and all this stuff. I thought that was nice. I really thought that was nice. It shows you who he is as a person, all around the GOAT in every aspect, I think. And so that was great. But and then we want to talk about what his reaction was, what the fans thought. But this portion of the Pats Nation was presented by Corso Law Group. When we come back, we're going to do just that. We're going to talk his reaction. We're going to talk about the fans' reaction. Got another little bit to play from you from out there, too. All of that and more. No flipping.
No one ever thinks they will be in need of a criminal or traffic lawyer, but things happen. Corso Law Group is Arizona's leading criminal and traffic law firm. Their 20-plus years experience and attention to detail has helped thousands of people who found themselves in a situation in Arizona. Whether it's a traffic ticket or more serious issue, talk with these expert attorneys. CorsoLawGroup.com.
Back in with more Corso and Catone, the real deal New England feel. All right, so hey, listen, we talked about who was there. We talked about notable moments. Now we want to talk about some of Brady's reaction and what they were going to do for him as well. And we talked to some people outside the stadium beforehand about what they thought would happen, right? Because everybody was wondering, what are they going to do? Are they going to retire his jersey? They're going to do this or do that? And one guy in particular, he said it quickly, but he had an idea as to what was coming. Joe, we have that? Play it. Corso and Catone out at the Patriots Brady enshrinement. Listen, we're here with
Mike Zillman.
Where are you from?
I'm from Lee, New Hampshire.
Okay, great. So, Mike, you lifelong Patriots fan?
Lifelong, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we got the.
Oh, there we go.
That's it.
There we
Yeah,
go.
a little more. These are the originals. These suck. But.
That's all right.
Okay, so
Old
listen,
school.
if you're tatting your body up for the Patriots, then it must mean something.
Yeah.
What are you expecting, Mike, from tonight?
I expected to see the GOAT. I mean, I watched the videos on the Patriots website yesterday, and I honestly watched. They showed all of the touchdowns scored in all of the playoff games, and I chubbed up. Sorry, I chubbed up.
Yeah.
It was fucking amazing, and I was just watching Brady and seeing guys throwing 60-yard bombs and guys wide open and stepping up. The guy was the best ever. And it just brought back memories.
Hey, listen, there's no reason to choke up.
Yeah.
When it
No,
comes
dude.
to passion in our sport,
No, it was awesome. It's awesome.
right? So do you think they're going to retire the jersey? You think they're
I
going
have to. Yeah,
sign a
Jersey
one-day
retired.
contract?
Jersey retired, 1-day contract. I'm going to guess a statue's coming. That won't be tonight. Maybe. Who knows? It all could happen.
Well, Mike,
All right.
we appreciate you being on Corso and Catone, the real deal, New England Field, Saturdays, 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern. You can tune in to Mark and I and Mike.
All right,
Thank you,
there we
sir.
go.
So, Mark, we appreciate it.
Joe,
Everybody
we
out
gotta
there.
cut the language.
Yeah,
Joe,
that's right.
language,
So it was
language.
electric.
Yeah.
It was for sure electric out there. And the people were excited. And you know what's funny, Mark? The Patriot way and don't give anything away. Though it's like ingrained into the whole region. People don't know. I'm not sure what to expect. I don't know what this is. It's like the Belichick way everywhere. Everywhere you go.
Everywhere.
you know?
Everywhere. Right?
He talked
Everywhere.
about the
Because, Chris,
statue.
even the players, when they spoke at this event, like the quarterbacks, well, what was it like to be in film study with him? And they were very guarded, almost like we better not say too much because Bill will yell at us, right?
Yeah. And so he was right. You know, they retired number 12. No one will ever wear number 12 again. Needed to happen. We didn't know that there were seven other Patriot numbers retired. They don't put them up, you know, in the stadium. So, you know, Hannah was one of those, and I think Mike Haynes. And so
you made a point though. What does a guy have to do to get a statue? I mean, all these other teams put up statues. Like this guy gave you Super Bowls. It's like you got to put up a statue.
Well, he's getting one. So they announced that he's going to get a bronze statue, 12 foot high because of number 12, and they're going to put it outside the Hall of Fame.
Nice.
You know, so I think they got a local person to do it. And so that's really cool. I mean, they're doing that, and they should do that. And someday we'll talk about the Belichick. You know, what do we think they'll do for him if they're doing this for Brady? But what do you think first of that, Mark? The fan reaction to it all, and then I want to talk about Brady's reaction.
So the fan reaction, Chris, was just, it was raw. It was, I mean, you saw the guy with his tattoo showing he wanted to show you his tattoos, right? It was, you know, that was just the type of night it was, Chris. People were nostalgic. They wanted to reminisce and talk about the great memories, because I also think in the back of their minds, we ain't going to see this ever. Never mind. We'll never see this dominance ever again, but we may never see a single Super Bowl for quite a while based on where this franchise is right now.
Whoa.
So it was just, but
you
it
had
was
to go
one of
say
those,
that in this show.
we're the real deal New England
Field.
Field, Chris. But it was very nostalgic, and people really wanted to remember the good times and what this really was, right?
Yeah, I thought the same. I mean, they were laughter, tears, and everything in between. The show had it all. You know, it had it all. It was a great event. And then talking about Brady now. So, you know, Kraft gets up, enshrines him now, and then they gives him the jacket, the number, all the things we talked about. Now Brady gets up and he's speaking. What are some of the moments? I mean, there were a lot of things I took from that. Notably too, that you could see he's taking lessons for for enunciation, because for his next job over there with Fox, you know, which I'm sure
maybe I should look into that.
Yeah, he's tired, and then you won't be the real deal New England Field then, Mark. You know, but what are some of your thoughts on his reaction? like what he had
Well,
to
Chris,
say.
one of the big things I took away from it was, and you and I have debated this on the show, was it Belichick? Was it Brady? Was it, more Belichick at the beginning, more Brady at the end? And Brady basically says, it wasn't me, it wasn't Bill, it was us. It was team, it was us. And the place went crazy. And then he goes and describes what that actually means to be team and to be us. And it wasn't either one of us separately. You know what I mean? And that really resonated, I think, because I think he finally put an end to who was it? It was us. And he talked about the Patriot way, which Gerard Mayo said a week earlier. I don't know what that is, but that's a whole other issue. That's a whole other issue, right? So that really stood out to me, Chris. And because I know you want to get into other stuff that he said, but that was the one thing that I'm like, okay, he had to put an end to that, and he did it.
No, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And he since has said some things too that shine. You start to hear all the things that shine light on more and more, a little bit more about their preparation, how Bill pushed him, how he pushed Bill, and Bill talked about that. Belichick talked about that at that night as well. To me, I took a lot from, obviously, his reaction to his family, what a family-oriented guy he is, about his kids, about his parents, his sisters mainly, and how they pushed him. That was touching to see some of that stuff. And the one thing I did look at too, Mark, was what he had to say. He didn't say it's for young people, but basically it was to young people out there about football itself. And he said, I encourage all of you to play football. Why? Because it's hard. He said it's hard. He said, and doing things easy in life is that, but the hard is what builds you, I'm paraphrasing, but makes you who you are and what you are. It's hard, he said, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning before school. And these are for the kids that are in school playing, for the opportunity to try to get on the field and play, for the opportunity to do it. Not because you're the full-fledged starter, you're going to play for sure, but how about the kids that have to drag themselves up at that time, work their tail off, sweat, blood, tears, everything, pain, only to get up the next morning and do it again. I that resonated with me because I see these kids do it every day, coaching high school football, and he's right. And it's the hard that makes it worth it, Mark. And those are the things I thought were fantastic messages to people. And even if you don't go on and play like he did, what you get from that you can apply to life and how to attack everything you do in life, the quality, the person that you are, that was phenomenal, that portion of the speech, Mark, I thought.
Yeah, it was. No, it absolutely was. You're right, Chris. And he was reaching out to the youth and to kids and to younger people that, and made that equation from football to life. And you're going to face obstacles. It's going to be difficult. Nobody said it was going to be easy. Life isn't easy. And he kind of connected the two. And I think that kind of put a caption on, I think, who he is, Chris, too, and what he believed in, his passion for the game and his dedication, attention to detail, everything that he basically encompasses, Chris. That football is life. It kind of summarized that up.
Encapsulated everything. So, listen, it was a wonderful event. We thank you to Mr. Kraft for doing that, putting that on. No expense was they bore no expense. It was fantastic. Once in a lifetime, in my opinion. And if you haven't seen it, go on YouTube and watch it again. So, Corso and Catone, this was fun, Mark.
It was fun. This was a good one.
So, thank you to Tom Brady for 20 unbelievable, unforgettable years. We'll never forget it, and we'll always thank him for it. So, Corso and Catone was presented by Corso Law Group. Hey, get on. All our shows are up for you to watch and listen. And tune into the Pats Nation. Sundays, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern will be the pregame show for the Patriots, so make sure you stick around for that. Come back next week. Hey, we're going to have all kinds of discussions. Anything you bring to the table, we will be ready. We are Corso and Catone, the real deal, New England feel. See you next week.